As much as it pains me to say it, Freja is a bit of a problem. That is true to an extent, and I'm going to go into all of that, but since Freja has been here for about a month now after a hero trial and multiple balance patches, and finally this first weekend of OWCS, things about this character are becoming a lot clearer. She's kinda broken. And not only that, I do think she can be a little annoying as well. Now, while I think that Freja has an excellent design on paper, her current implementation is absolutely abandoning that safe side of strong for the more dangerous side instead. So I wanted to take a look at why Freja is so good and what exactly could reasonably bring her in line with the rest of the DPS cast. So first I want to lay out my list of grievances, then we're going to dive into those individually, and then I'll pitch you a couple of solutions at the end that hopefully can solve multiple problems at once. So let's list them off here, right? She has an incredibly quick and effective one-shot. She has an extremely robust and controllable range of motion in relation to her lethality. Her passive makes ult tracking kind of a nightmare, and she has one major perk that, in my opinion, is way too strong in its current implementation. So, starting with the elephant in the room here, Freja does not technically have a one-shot on any character, but let's be real, she effectively does. Freja's take aim shots are tied to her dash, so not only do you have to use a resource to get them back quickly, you have to quickly move your position and then adjust your aim accordingly to how you've moved your body around, right? On paper, I think this is a great synthesis of Overwatch's movement and shooting systems where you have to compensate for your quick movements to get really high-skilled shots and get that super value. Your brain should be trying to figure out, like, do you try to shoot back to back and deal with a sudden jerk in your position, which could mess up your shots, or do you give it a second or two to hang in the air to line up a better shot that might actually leave you more exposed or potentially give your target more time to escape? It's a really cool idea, and I think it's an absolutely cool gameplay decision. The problem is that you can largely ignore this, especially if you're really good. Since the dash can be canceled with a scope immediately after using it, you can shoot, dash, scope, and then shoot again, all in the fraction of a second, to the point where your crosshair barely moves. So the setup and the skill required to get this two-stage kill is practically bypassed, and your target is basically guaranteed to die if they are like 250 HP or lower. And to boot, you're left with one more dash and probably your updraft at the end of it as well. All of this risk of the flying character who pauses in midair is kind of eliminated when she can just dash laterally only and still be moving at full speed to get a kill. Focusing on her movement here, the reason all of her one-shots are so frustrating is in large part because of her extreme range of motion and control over that mobility. Other sniper-like characters like Widow or Soj have limitations to when they can be mobile and also have a kill threat. Widow needs to charge when she goes for a grapple, which already has a really long cooldown, and then Soj needs to have a rail first if she chooses to do an aggressive swing. These are both also fairly obvious, linear, and easy to keep track of. If either of these characters miss, they don't actually get a second chance in that same motion. It's just one or done. Freja, on the other hand, not only has like 3 to 4 movement abilities at any one time, she has incredibly powerful and silent air stalling that opens up her movement significantly. You know how when a Pharah slides on a roof and falls down to barrage on you, it can feel really BS because Pharah is, for whatever reason, really silent? Imagine a character who can do something similar to that at all times and doesn't have to get in your face and basically trade for the kill. That is Freja. Freja, at the current moment, can effectively stall forever, allowing her to wait for the perfect moment to two-tap you and escape over some rooftop or over a wall or something. On top of these powerful movement abilities, she has a lot of control over her general movement as well. Now, I do want to be clear here, high mobility characters are not only fun to play, but also fun to master, and Freja is absolutely no exception in this department. She has actually a lot of fun tech that I think is going to be really hard to get around, because you don't want to remove tech from a character, because if it makes them more fun and more high skill and engaging, getting rid of that can often feel like you are removing a lot of the skill cap, and we definitely don't want that for Freja. But there is a reason that no other character in Overwatch has permanent flying or perfectly controllable 360-degree movement, even if it were fun. It's just too broken. It does not work in this game. I'm not saying Freya actually does this, but the control that she has over stopping and starting that can make her jerk around and shift her small hurt box all over the place at her will is really hard to deal with. And since her movement is tied with her damage, it can also be hard to kind of know when she is going to shoot you or what is coming your way. I want you to think of it like this. Most characters, if they see you, they're just going to shoot you. But since Freya has such a weird dynamic with how her movement and her take aims work, you actually don't know when the shots are going to come in. So you might be planning for shots early and then they don't come and you've wasted a cooldown or something because you're trying to avoid taking a bunch of damage all at one time. Freya's movement is fun and there is a lot to master, but I would argue at this current moment in time, it is just too much. It is way too strong for this character. It's hard to justify removing some of these movement options in tech because they are fun, but we also don't want to set a bad precedent for how mobile you're allowed to be and then later in the future take that away. That just feels really bad for the player. I would say now is definitely the time to nerf Freya's movement a little so the general player base doesn't learn and get used to that level of motion that feels a little out of place in this game. 1 second. When I came back from my nosebleed, I stopped recording. Yes. Now those last two, I think are definitely the biggest problems. These next two, not nearly as bad, but I do want to bring them up. Freya does not have the best ult in the game. I think we all know that. It's pretty easy to counter, but you still need to be able to be prepared to counter it. That can be hard, especially during the middle or the end of a match, because Freya's passive makes it harder to track when she actually has an ult. As an enemy, I don't find it to be a gratifying skill to track final blows and keep a mental count in my head for minutes at a time. And since her passive stores ult charge and auto injects it after use if you already have 3 final blows, it can be really easy to lose track about what is actually happening, where her ult charge actually is. Yes, it is a skill to track ults, and I don't want to remove that. But for Freya, I find it to be neither intuitive nor interesting, unlike the rest of the cast. And finally here, we gotta talk about Freya's perk, the one that gives her another dash from using Updraft. It gives Freya way too many options. It's extra kill threat, extra mobility, extra stall. It does everything you could possibly want from a perk. I think it goes without saying, but giving a character another one of the ability that is responsible for about, 75% of her kit's power is really strong. Freya's major perk gives her such a good later game spike in value that this character is just so valuable to have on your team. But enough complaining. This is a solution-oriented channel, so I've come up with a handful of changes that I think could alleviate some of these issues, so, let's go ahead and talk about them. Let's start with the one-shot here, definitely the biggest problem. I think that there are 2 major ways you could solve this. You could decrease the initial damage, aka the damage from the dart, not the explosion, so that 2 body shots no longer kill, and that would force Freya to use a 3rd dart in order to get one, or a headshot. But I don't really see this working for 2 reasons. One, if you don't lower the damage enough, it would be really easy to weave in a primary fire or 2 and finish the job, and if you lower the damage way too far, then she's gonna feel really bad. And 2, it's kind of overtly punishing for lower level players. Listen, I love having high skilled heroes, but we can't act like it's a problem when some heroes are almost unusable at lower ranks and way too good at higher ranks. That is a complicated conversation for another day. But for the sake of this, we're gonna try not to make her any harder than she currently is. Also, for the record, lowering the explosion damage only is probably gonna run into the exact same problem if I had to guess. And to be quite honest with you, at higher levels, since many of the Freyas are probably gonna hit a headshot more often than not, the one shot is gonna be there anyway, and I think a lot of this problem with Freya is that she's really good specifically at higher levels. So more realistically, I think you have to put in some amount of time between take aim shots, because as it stands right now, you can kind of do them instantly. It's a very short amount of time between them. These instant shots in the cancels feel really good if you're able to mechanically execute them, but the whole point of this character is to add extra time and steps to get these kills, and instant multi-shots are kind of backwards to that idea. This is actually a pretty similar situation to fighting games and one-button inputs. Take, for instance, the DP, Dragon Punch, your invincible reversal. If that means nothing to you, doesn't really matter. Very powerful, very good option that you need in certain scenarios. In most fighting games, this would be a motion input. Basically, you have to go to different parts of the stick and then hit a button. That requires time. So between your reaction and your ability to input it, there is a bit of a delay. There will always be a delay there. But with one-button fighters, you can get that same DP out instantly. Basically, not to go into everything, but there are options that just don't work against one-button DPs. But the problem is that you can't nerf that ability without making it feel bad. There is a kind of precedent to what a DP is supposed to do. Nerfing it is going to make it feel like less of a move, but keeping it like it is with that input system makes it far too powerful. If we want to apply this theory to Overwatch, if you had some very small window of time that forced you to wait a second and maybe even move a little before shooting, that aim dynamic and that time requirement I was talking about would come into play and actually make the difference between getting a kill or not. In fact, it might even make a difference if you hit the bolt in the first place or not. Maybe there's a world where she has to completely finish the dash before she can take aim again. Not sure about that one, but it could be a solution. I think that this type of idea is where we should be going, but I agree that it could in theory make her a little clunky. So I'm not exactly sure how practical the solution is in the way I've presented it. Maybe there is some way to get her to stop firing as often that can be integrated into her kit a lot better. Just thinking of it now, maybe she could do less damage if you don't wait a certain amount of time between your take aim shots. I don't know. I want to add some clarification. I've played a little bit of Freja now just to get some footage for this video, and I've kind of realized that not everything I've said is exactly true about her one-shot or about kind of like how you can shoot between them. So basically, let me just clear it up. One, she cannot technically fire immediately after a dash, right? She actually does have a time where she has to stop. It is very quick, don't get me wrong. I still think that it needs to get longer, but like that, this is the reason why she is able to one-shot. It's because it's such a quick change. It is not technically immediate, but it effectively is, kind of for the sake of the argument, right? The other thing I wanted to talk about is the stop in her movement, because I kind of made it seem like you can stop her movement entirely, no matter what you do. That's not exactly the case, right? I want to show you something. When you are going like from side to side here, that is as far as it goes. Like that is you're going to go that far every single time. That's not exactly staying in the same place like I made it out to be. What I realized as I was playing it is that you can do that. You just go backwards or forwards. And really you could also go up, pretty similar, right? So a lot of the good Frejas are not moving side to side a lot of the time. They're moving back and forth and up, and maybe a little backwards or a little like to the side, like kind of this way, you know? That gets them closer, gives them more movement. I wanted to point that out because just a classic, like, what's it called? Just like slowing or increasing your movement, like your drift, which I'm not sure if I talked about yet or not, but I bring up at a point where I think you can like increase the drift and like not stay as still in the air to kind of bring back that movement is not going to work when you go backwards and forwards because your cursor is going to be in the same spot, right? It doesn't actually solve that problem. So I wonder if there's a world where Freja, you know, how she pops up a little bit, you know, upwards, even if she's going left or right. I wonder if there's a world where it kind of takes her higher up. So at least your cursor is moving a little bit. You have to compensate for that. But I think that's actually a really, really tough issue to solve. So really, there just needs to be more time between these shots, right? Another thing I do want to clarify is I did say that it's like a really like hard mechanical skill. That's because I was dumb and I was trying to scope, shoot, unscope, dash, and then scope back in. That was like really weird and off-putting. I realized that you literally can just hold the scope button and it will do it instantly. So with that in mind, there definitely needs to be some way to, I think there needs to be some time between her shots that, you know, before you can actually use them. But I also do think that maybe there's a world where this auto scope needs to be removed. Because that just makes it really, really easy. And I think that having to scope back in, again, adds in that extra time. Maybe there is a world where you can do it perfectly. Like if you're really good, you can get like a perfect scope in. But if you add extra time to it, that might actually be the way to solve it, right? That actually might be the way to add that buffer in there that I was talking about earlier. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify those things because I don't think it makes the argument wrong. I think it just brings it a little more, it makes it more cohesive what's actually true on live. So thank you. I think I'm going to stitch this in where I talk about her movement. So enjoy that part, I guess. Of course, the other big thing is Freya's movement, and I think it definitely needs another pass. And I've got a couple ideas here. I mean, that's what this whole section of the video is. Did you forget? Did you forget? Are you stupid? First off, let's just rip it off. I think the time that you're allowed to be in ADS slowdown in the air should be significantly reduced. The stalling is just too good. I mean, you could be in the air almost permanently if you played your cards right. I still think she should be able to keep all of her fun movement tech, but we just cannot allow her to stall silently and stealthily as much as she does right now. To help with that, of course, we could just change some of her sound effects, you know, make them more noticeable. And specifically, I think adding a sound that plays whenever she is hovering would prevent her from being a super assassin. You would know that Freya is somewhere lurking, you just might not know where. Another idea I had to prevent stalling, and I'm not sure how much I like this one, is to force Freya to touch the ground again before using a second dash. Now, I think that one might be a little overly restrictive, but it does give Freya that time to allow her to hover, which I think is really important for lower level players, while still stopping stalling because she can't use another dash in the air. Is part of the hero fantasy gone when you do this? Yes, and that's the major problem here. Quickly, just with her hurtbox manipulation and jerkiness with her abilities, I'm not exactly sure how you stop this. The best idea I can come up with is that her slowdown mid-air actually kind of drifts her a little bit so that she doesn't just stop completely. She kind of goes with it a little. I think it's a way to actually bring back some of that movement dynamic, right? You're not just going to be full stopping in order to get your shot. You actually do have to compensate for that little bit you're going to drift. And you know, Freya can like jump up or backwards, you know, depending on which way you go. That's kind of a skill about how you're going to line up your shot versus how you actually move your character. I don't know, I think that could probably be a much better way. It might actually open up some tech depending on how they code that, if that's the way they want to go. Talking about her ult charge and being able to track that, I think it is a bit of a hard problem to solve. I want to be able to keep the skill of ult tracking, so I don't want to create a visual that just indicates whenever she has ult, but I think that some kind of indicator that helps show where she's at with the ult charge could be nice. The first idea I had here was to play a sound effect that cashes out when her passive is up, so you always know when she's about to get an injection of 25 ult charge. One big problem I see with this is making sure you can actually hear that noise in the chaos after Freya pops an ult and it auto-injects. It's probably not that big of a deal, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. You also could light something up on Freya's model, particularly maybe her bola, I think it's on her hip somewhere, at a different level based on her final blow count. So basically, if she has 0 final blows, it's not glowing at all. 1, a little bit. 2, more. 3, it's glowing harder. That means you know that she actually has her ult. This actually introduces a couple more skills to the Freya player. Not only do you have to start thinking about hiding your true ult charge, maybe that encourages you to use it more often, but it also makes it easier to see you. This is a character who can kind of come out of nowhere and just assassinate you, but if she has something glowing on her hip, you might actually notice her more often if she's not careful. And I think that's actually a pretty decent way to get her to be less stealthy. It is a skill. You have to kind of manage the risk about maybe they're going to see me. I have 2 out of my 3 eliminations. That's pretty big. But if you have 0 or 1, maybe you have a much better chance to be stealthier. You know what I mean? And of course, lastly here, that perk has got to change. I like the idea of getting another shot reset in some way, but I don't think she should get a whole other dash. The easiest solution here, and honestly, this is what I thought the ability did when I first tried it out, is to just refresh her take aim when you use Updraft. So instead of giving her another dash, make Updraft just give her take aim back. You can still get that other shot, but it's tied to a much more specific and riskier motion. Now you have a choice to make. If you're using Updraft to set up, you're actually going to lose one of your mid-fight take aim shots unless you really stall out, which ideally you wouldn't be able to do. Or you can try and use it mid-fight, but you're kind of putting yourself in a bit of an awkward situation. It's not something that you can just use inherently really well. You have to really think about what is going to happen if you decide to use Updraft to try to get a take aim shot back immediately. I think it's really interesting. This change removes a little bit of her agency while keeping a high skill cap and also introducing, I think, other skills. So ultimately, I think it adds a lot more interesting decision making. Again, Freja is great, reiterating that here. I've had a lot of fun with this character, but she is a perfect example of a high skill character with some BS attached to her. 90% of people are not going to experience firsthand the real reason this character is so powerful, but it doesn't make it any less of a problem. Hard characters can be fair to fight at high levels still, even at full mastery. Tracer is a perfect example of this. There are also some higher skill characters that have a once in a blue moon, super high skill BS tactic that is annoying, sure, but rare enough that I can give it a pass. Genji is the perfect example of not minding going against this character like 99% of the time, but every once in a while, he'll just dash up to you perfectly and one-shot you. And it's like, okay, man, thanks, awesome, love it. Oh, but it's high skill, Shut up, man. Freja, however, does not fall into this category yet. She is very often powerful and frustrating at the same time, unlike those other archetypes. I don't want to dumb down Freja or make her worse for the majority of people, but she does need changes, that's for sure. So as always, I'm sending out the call to arms. How would you solve the Freja problem? Did you like how I solved the Freja problem? Let me know down below. Hopefully this mid-season has some good changes for her. Until then, stay safe out there. Watch your back. Look up. She's there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Off the cuff recap, as always, outro. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, thank you guys. Like, subscribe if you like that. I am working on more videos, more scripts. A slow start, I know. I'm a little busy coming up, but you know, I'm working on that stuff. I have memberships on this channel. I feel like I always forget to mention that most of the time. If you like me, appreciate me, just check it out. It's a couple extra videos. Not that much. Don't worry about it if you can't. Twitch.tv/LaneHemingway. I need to start streaming more. I will be streaming the mid-season, especially with that Street Fighter collab, because I literally talked about fighting games in this video. So yeah, that is something to look forward to. I think that's it. Have I covered my bases? My Discord server is down below. Please join that if you want to keep up with all things Lane Hemingway. Okay, that should be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please, as always, have a good day. Peace out. See you then. See you then? See you sometime. I don't know.